Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my home. On today's video, I went ahead and did a little bit of research and found different methods that people suggest online to clean your home while dealing with ADHD. As always, these methods may apply to people dealing with depression or anxiety, and I am simply testing it out. By no means am I saying this is going to be working, but I am definitely testing it out. So let's go over some of the rules and kind of setup that this person just suggested online. The first thing that was suggested was to pick everything up, to go at every single room and just pick everything up, put everything back, kind of like when I suggest doing a reset, but you're doing it for the entirety of your home. Now, they did mention that you want to make sure that surfaces are cleared, floors are cleaned, and that there's nothing kind of standing in the way of when you're going to be cleaning. Again, the thought process is you start by putting everything away or where it should go, and then we're going to go in and clean. I wasn't sure really how I felt about this, but I kind of can see how that can be time saving. I put everything away in every single room in roughly about 25 minutes. I was timing it because I wanted to make sure this was effective. And I do have quite a bit of rooms and bathrooms and restrooms to cover. So in my opinion, this portion was doable. Now, one thing to keep in mind, at least in my household, is I have 2 children. So there's going to be some add-ons, and this person didn't really seem like they mentioned things for children. So in what you're going to be watching today, you'll be seeing my kids' setups as well. And I did have to count that for time. If you don't have kids at home or your kids helped you out to do some of those chores, then you might be cutting that time in half. I have very young children. They have their chores to be done, but I did not include them in my videos because I typically don't show my children in any of my videos. But I can see how that would have been a little bit more time saving if I had them putting their stuff away. But for the purposes of this video, then you're just going to see me doing these tasks, and there is a little bit of an extension of time. But again, if you have children at home that take care of these tasks or could at least put things away, then I can see how this shaved off probably about 5 to 8 minutes. Now, I think that because I have worked on my resets for quite some time, I've gotten pretty efficient at doing this. And whenever I do reset, I simply put things back to where they belong. Now, when it comes to cleaning, I still very much struggle with doing it all in one day. I'm the type of person that will usually suggest cleaning one zone per day, especially if you have a pretty lengthy schedule during the week, if you have long hours, if you have a job that you have to work at night. Those are the type of things that I consider on top of dealing with ADHD. So I'm usually cleaning one zone per day, but I do want to try new methods because we are not all the same and some of us have different schedules. So I want to show that as I am showing you different ways to manage your home. Now, again, this method is a one-day cleaning. The person suggested that this would be great for anybody who has a Monday through Friday, that's a 9 to 5, that maybe just does resets throughout the week, but wants to actually do a full cleaning during the weekend. They suggested that this particular cleaning would take only about 2 hours. And again, the first part is going to be putting everything back where it should go or putting it away wherever it's going to go. And then the second part is going to be actually cleaning. So I'm here to test it out to see if it really can take you under 2 hours. I have, let's say, I think I have about 3 bedrooms. I have 3 bathrooms, the kitchen, the living room, and what we call a loft. And that would be the extent of how much I'm cleaning. And I'm testing out if it's going to be under 2 hours or not. I did find that as I was putting everything away, it kind of made me feel like there were some areas that there was just way too much to handle. Now, with my children, I do tend to give them more freedom of how many items to have that are decorations or on counters, because that is their room. They are children and they have a right to have their own stuff. I do remind them, however, that when we have more items, we do have to maintain more items. And every time our shelves get full or an item gets full, then it's probably time to get rid of, donate, or trash items that we no longer need or have space for. And with my children being 7 and 4, there is going to be times where they are okay with this, and then there's going to be times where they're absolutely fighting this concept. But every time I talk to them about these thresholds, as I always refer to them as, I let them know that it is better to manage an area than it is to have things just hanging out there. Of course, my 4-year-old is very much not for it. My 7-year-old has had a bit of a harder time, but I do believe he deals with a bit of an ADHD mindset as I do. And so he definitely thrives with a clearer area as opposed to a more cluttered area. So I think he's more open to it. And probably every 3 to 4 weeks, we go through his room and declutter it just to maintain that threshold at a reasonable size for him. Now, throughout all of my videos, you're going to hear certain key terms that will be utilized over and over and over again. And one of them is going to be a threshold. I have gotten in the habit of mentioning this to anybody that follows me. You need to keep in mind your threshold for cleaning, for maintaining, for decluttering, for making sure you're maintaining your home. A threshold for what you can maintain is how we're going to figure out if it's doable to maintain these items, or if it's going to be so overwhelming that you just don't have the time, means, and energy to maintain this. So whenever we're looking at an area or a zone, let's take this desk as an example. If you take a look at it, you're going to see different decorations, different things on the table, different things on the shelves. I need to look at this area and decide how much of it do I typically want to maintain, and how much of it could I give this? How much time could I give this zone to clean it? If I feel like 10 minutes is too much and it's taking me 10 minutes to clean it and decluttering it, then I need to get rid of stuff. This, for example, is a perfect setup to show you how it can go so bad so fast. This definitely overgoes my expectations of threshold, and I need to keep decluttering this area. This is my vanity, and I'm really bad about making sure everything goes back into the drawers. I am really bad about just setting things down instead of putting them away, and that's something that I have to practice. But if I have to put things away and clear the area, I'm pretty efficient. So part of me wants to not worry about it, because I can't just put things back in a few minutes. But I do need to reconsider that. And again, that just falls under what is your threshold of maintaining an area or a zone. Another key term that you're going to hear in most of my videos, it's going to be zones. I don't call them rooms or sections. I focus on my home as a divided zone area. And those zones are going to be a combination of zone 1, which is all the bedrooms, zone 2, which is all the bathrooms and restrooms, zone 3, which is the kitchen, zone 4, which is the dining area and the living room, and zone 5, which tends to be all other areas like hallways, entryways, stairs. All of those fall under that specific zone. And then I divide them by day. Monday is zone 1, Tuesday zone 2, Wednesday zone 3, and so on and so forth. I also add laundry to that without calling it a zone, because I do 1 to 2 loads of laundry every day. And I try to always make sure that I tackle the towels and the bedding first, because those tend to take a little bit more time. And so I've always just designated that day, Mondays, to towels and bedding as the first 2 loads of the week. Of course, you can change that depending on the needs in your house, because let's face it, if you have children, if you have a work uniform, if you need laundry sooner than later, then you need to adjust that based to that need that you have. Now, as for a schedule or a routine, I typically do not call them that. When you deal with ADHD, a list, a schedule, or routine tend to be red flags for us. Not because we don't appreciate them, but because more often than not, we can't just follow them from the get-go. And it can be really hard. Oftentimes when you go to therapy, when you go to a psychiatrist, they will suggest that people with ADHD thrive with lists and to-do lists. The problem is making sure that list is close by and it's not out of sight, because if it's out of sight, we are not getting it done. So when I schedule these zones, it reduces the amount of thought process that runs through my head. I'm not thinking I have to clean my bedroom and my kids' bedrooms and the kitchen. I'm not thinking that. I've already set in my head that zone 1 is bedrooms, and I already said that that zone requires 3 specific tasks. So if you like, you can always write these things down. I have gotten into the habit of getting these weekly planners from Amazon. They're really inexpensive, and you just rip the page and write it down. I get really bright color pens or highlighters, things that are going to catch my attention, and then I write down Monday, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and so on. But I'm more intentional in using things that I'm going to remember. I can basically write it down, rip it off of the planner, and put it on the fridge, and it's gonna be there in front of me. Now, of course, once you've created a habit when it comes to ADHD, it doesn't require much of us to think or to execute, but it does require time to create a habit. And that's typically about a week to 2 weeks, depending if you're used to that behavior or not. So I like to have everything the same way over and over and over, because that is the only way that I will actually get any of these things done. Now, I have created systems throughout my house that are specific to 2 things. 1, it's going to be cleaners, and 2, it's going to be food. Unfortunately, when you have ADHD, you have the habit of buying multiples of. And you can probably relate to this. You've probably gone to the grocery and bought 3 more boxes of pasta, and then you come home and you've already have 6 boxes of pasta. And that can be a problem because it can also be very wasteful. So that's another thing that I like to create systems on, the pantry, making sure that I replace only as I go, and I try not to replace because I assume it's empty or it's about to run out. So unfortunately, I do tend to run out of a lot of things, but it's for a specific purpose, because if I just assume, then I'm going to be left with 10 boxes of pasta. And right now I have like 4 cans of different things that I didn't need, and peanut butter jars. Gosh, they're everywhere in the pantry. So cleaners and food tend to be the issue for us. Accessibility and remembering that we already have things. And I hope to make those videos here in the next coming weeks, but I just want to share that with you guys so that you know that it's very much, unfortunately, a common behavior with anybody that has ADHD. Now, this is actually the second part. The person suggests you start cleaning one type of surface at a time. I was a little confused about this, so it took me a few times reading that section. But basically, this person suggested that you grab the cleaner for glass or mirrors and go every single room cleaning just those specific sections. Part of me thought, okay, this kind of makes sense. And I guess if I'm just cleaning the mirrors and the glass, then it's only really a few rooms that are going to, need this. And then I looked at the windows and I was like, well, I can clean the windows. And then mid cleaning the windows, I just thought, I just added so much more work to my own list. But I don't know if this is the method that I would recommend for someone who has ADHD. I can see how this can go sideways very, very fast, because as I was cleaning, I started looking at other areas and I kept working really hard to avoid focusing on that. I kept telling myself the focus is the glass. The focus is the glass. So I don't know if that person kept that in mind, that when we leave a zone or an area, the likelihood increases of us not finishing the task because we've now introduced other environments. So I'm going to give this portion a no for ADHD, because when I show people, I tried to maintain them in the particular area and focused on one task at a time. Me jumping back and forth between all of the rooms was very stressful. There was a lot of anxiety happening because, as I said, I would look at other areas and think, oh, I could do this, or I should probably do this, or I could just take this with me because I'm going to the other room. And it took a lot of effort, a lot of just mind control to stay in that area. So I don't know that I would definitely recommend this as ADHD friendly. Now, the second portion that they recommended for cleaning, it was so basically it went from glass to surfaces to floors and finally scrubbing surfaces like the toilets, the tubs, and the showers and the sinks. Now I'm doing the counters, and here's another reason why I would not recommend this one, and it's because you have to remember that not all counters can be cleaned with the same cloth. For example, if I'm cleaning the bathroom counters and I take that cloth out to the bedrooms, I might be introducing certain things to the bedroom that shouldn't be in the bedroom. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible. I think some people could. In my opinion, though, there are certain things in the bathroom that should not be brought out of the bathroom. Just like when you're cleaning kitchen counters, you don't want to use the same, towel or cloth basically to clean other surfaces. So I found myself changing the cloth, the microfiber over and over again multiple times, and I didn't really quite care for that. I think that can be very distracting, and I wish the person would have said from the get-go, have maybe some microfibers of ready to go, because I did have to change those and it took more time than I probably would have saved otherwise. I would say, though, that as I was taking my time and kind of thinking of this process, I think something like this over the course of a couple days would be great to do. Not necessarily in zones like the way I do it, but if you chose that one day you were going to just dust the entire house or apartment, that would be a good place to start. You're not necessarily cleaning or deep cleaning, but you're just avoiding some of these messes over time. Or if you wanted to take care of all of the sinks in the place, or if you wanted to take care of the toilets or things like that, taking care of those things all at once in a specific day could be helpful. But again, I think for somebody who's wanting to do a deep cleaning or a full house cleaning, this can be very confusing with the bouncing back and forth, especially because this was meant to be an ADHD cleaning method. So in my opinion, if I was going to do a full day of ADHD cleaning, I still would treat it in zones. I would start with all of the bedrooms and making sure each bedroom is finalized before hopping to the other bedroom. I would make sure that my caddy cleaners were easily accessible, and maybe even having like a cleaning cart ready to go that you can just roll with you from room to room. And then I would leave bathrooms and restrooms to the very last, because those areas require a little bit more in-depth cleaning, like the toilets, the tubs, the showers. All of those require a little bit more time from you than maybe the bedrooms do. I think something like that would have been a little bit more manageable, and maybe keeping it to 1 to 3 tasks as opposed to be, areas like the mirrors and the glass, the counters and the floors. For some people, this may work. I think it might still be something that's a little bit not as manageable in my opinion, but you let me know in the comments. Would you try a system like this at home? I think it can also apply to how big the area is. Are we talking about an apartment? Are we talking about 2 floors? Are we talking about multiple rooms with various different items in there? All of this is important to keep in mind when we're applying methods and systems to cleaning your home. Now that I basically finished the top part, most of it at least, I have to be honest with you, I did not take this system down to the downstairs. I was so incredibly overwhelmed and tired by the time I was done with the top floor that I just feel like adding the kitchen and the living room were not going to be doable. As I mentioned originally in the beginning, it took me about 25 minutes to put everything back where it should go. That was both the bottom floor and the top floor. But for the cleaning, that actually took me about an hour and 15 minutes. And I thought because everything was already technically put away, that the cleaning wouldn't take me that long. But the reason it took me so long is because I was bouncing from one room to the other. And I was also having to gather more supplies because I wasn't prepared. So I don't think, even though it's still technically under the 2 hours, I just don't feel like this particular system was really tailored towards ADHD. And maybe I think the person, while they had good intentions, they didn't quite understand that when you have ADHD, the more distractions presented, the less likely you are to finalize a task, and the more overwhelmed you feel, the more you shut down. At least in my experience, if I feel overwhelmed doing a task, I avoid it. I just don't want to finish it. I'm not interested. It's already taken me so much energy to start it, and having to find things and gather things, I just don't want to add to it. So if I had to rate this particular system, I would give it a 5 out of 10. And that's simply because the cleaning portion was definitely not ADHD friendly. The reset portion, I would highly suggest for everybody. I think that portion I would give an 8 out of 10. I think it's reasonable. I think it's time saving, and I think it's doable. But for the cleaning, I just wouldn't recommend something like that. So I am hoping to find better systems. If you have any tips for us, let me know down in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of this style of video. And if you do have like a reference to another ADHD cleaning system, let me know. And I'd be more than happy to display it here and show you guys step by step if it's doable or if I would not recommend it to anybody who has ADHD. As always, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to subscribe if you're new to my channel. And I will see you guys in the next video. Till next time, bye.